second guessing. You can't have my yes. I'm giving you my fear of never knowing whatever's coming next. I know you got me. You can't have my yes. You're the lamp, you're the light, you're the cloud that guides me. You're the way, you're the truth, you're the life inside me. You conquer my fears, so I'll leave it all behind. I'm running to the light. I'm giving you my dreams and my ambitions. Your presence is my prize and my provision. I'll answer when you ask. Oh, who could come against if you are for me? 'Cause even in the fire, I know you got me. You can have my yes again. You're the lamp, you're the light, you're the cloud that guides me. You're the way, you're the truth, you're the life inside me. You conquer my fears, so I'll leave it all behind. I'm running to the light. Yeah, come on, we sing. Oh, wherever you are, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. Wherever you are, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. Wherever you are, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. Follow you, yeah. Oh, wherever you are, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. Oh, wherever you are, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow. Oh, wherever you are, wherever you wanna go, I'll follow you. I'll follow you. Oh, you're the lamp, you're the light, you're the cloud that guides me. You're the way, you're the truth, you're the life inside me. You conquer my fears, so I'll leave it all behind. I'm running to the light. Yeah, I'm running to the light. Yeah, I'll leave it all behind. I'm running to the light. Amen. Guys, go ahead and have a seat and take a look at this video.
Hey there, and welcome to Kensington. We're so glad you're here with us today, whether that's in person at one of our 6 campuses or streaming online. If we haven't met yet, and I hope we have, my name is Susan Walsh, and I'm the campus director at our Orion campus. One thing I love about my job is being part of a team of people who are passionate about Jesus and loving their neighbor. So if you're here with us in person, I want you to know that the hub is open. It's that very conspicuous place in the lobby with orange signs and people. Well, not orange people, but people in orange, I mean. Anyway, as things continue to open up, you may want to find out more about how to get connected here beyond weekend services. The hub is a one-stop shop for just that. So if you're new, or it's been a while, or if you're just ready to take some next steps, stop by the hub in the lobby. Here's another opportunity for our in-person attendees. Believe it or not, we still have openings in our K-Kids program for volunteers, because there's nothing like being around kids to bring us back to childlike faith and delight in the little things. Our K-Kids program is for babies through elementary students during Sunday services, and we'd love to have you join our team. So you can take out your phone even now and check out the app, or go to kensingtonchurch.org/kids-serve. And I won't be offended if you're looking at your phone while I'm talking. And while you're on your phone, or tablet, or personal computer, remember that we're social. So engage with us daily on Facebook or Instagram. It's a great way to stay in the know and to engage with the community throughout the week. On Facebook, like and follow our Central Kensington page, as well as your campus-specific group. We'll get right back to this incredible Go series in just a moment. We're in week 3 already, and I've enjoyed every moment. It's giving us such a fresh vision about God and our purpose on this planet. I wanted to point out that tomorrow is a holiday. It's Memorial Day, and I'm sure most of us have plans to enjoy the day with family and friends, but let's remember the men and women who have made the ultimate sacrifice for their country and our freedoms. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Good morning, everyone. So glad you're joining us today. As Susan said, we are here in Memorial Day weekend, and tomorrow we remember those who paid the ultimate sacrifice for our country and for the lives that we get to live here. And we just sincerely, honorably want to just thank them for what they've done. And also to you, if you have a family member or you have a close friend who sacrificed their life for this country, we want to say thank you to them and to you as well. We wouldn't be able to live the lives we live. We may very well not be able to worship in the manner we do without their sacrifice, and it is so much appreciated. My name is Ryan Morrill, and I'm part of our staff here, and again, thrilled that you're with us. One of the other things that Susan talked about in the video was an opportunity to impact the next generation. I work closely with our kids team back there every single Sunday morning, working with future lives and teaching children about what it means to follow Jesus. And I personally believe there is no better thing to do with your life than to impact this next generation coming, because they truly are the hope and the future. And so just want to invite you into that. If you want to impact your life, but even more so impact your life, because when I work with children, when I work with teenagers, I know I'm making a little impact with them, but I also know what it's meaning for my life. And I actually think it's far greater for what it has taught me. So I want to invite you into that. As Susan said, you can text kensingtonchurch.org/serve. There's also kensingtonchurch.org/kkidsserve if you want to go straight to the page. And if that's too much, just stop by the Kids Welcome Center desk after the service. We would love to talk to you. Today, on your way in, you are handed this brochure and or pamphlet, whatever you want to call it. And this is something that we're really excited about, that we've talked about the last few weeks, and we're going to be talking about the next several weeks as well. And it's our new initiative here at Kensington Church through TTI, the 2 Timothy initiative. And what it is, it's about church planting, which is so close. Actually, it's probably the heartbeat of what Kensington is about. And it's taking place in North India. This is our new church partner. And right now, we are going to watch a video about a woman named Indriana, who is having incredible impact there at making disciples, much of because she is part of a church planting network. And we want to come alongside her and hundreds and thousands of others to continue to impact the people of North India. So check this video out, and I'll be back up after that to share a little more.
Before Indrani met Jesus, her life was full of darkness. The deaths of her husband and father drove her to an obsession with power, an obsession with witchcraft. Because when she practiced witchcraft and channeled the spirits, she could see her husband and father. She could talk to them. It made her feel like they weren't really gone, that she wasn't alone. So she gave herself over to the spirits and their power. But that power became petrifying.
My village saw the evil power I possessed and were afraid. They knew I was a powerful witch doctor and that I could cast spells to destroy their lives. I terrified them, so they rejected and abandoned me. Eventually, so did my family. I was all alone.
Then one day, a disciple maker named Dilka met Indrani. Like others who knew her, Dilka could see that Indrani battled darkness. But unlike the others, she had the answer to Indrani's problems: Jesus. Dilka shared with Indrani of Jesus' great love and power and invited her to church. Indrani agreed to go, but only with the hopes of accessing more power and becoming an even more powerful witch doctor. While Indrani went to church to gain more power for herself, God had other plans.
The church prayed for me, and as they did, I saw a great light pushing out the darkness inside of me. The evil that had held me for so long was gone. When I returned home, I tried doing witchcraft, but I couldn't. Something was holding me back. As I went to worship the spirits, I heard a voice say, "You have victory in me. I love you so much, my child." When I heard this, I gave my life to Jesus.
Indrani removed the idols, charms, and shrines from her home. She burned them, renounced her ties with evil, and declared that she was now a follower of Jesus. Her community couldn't believe her transformation. The evil that consumed her was gone, and everything about her changed. She looked different. She acted different. And she had a new purpose in life, to know God and help others to know Him too. Indrani has become an incredible disciple maker. She has led 8 of her family members to the Lord. She's shared the gospel with more than 1,100 people. She's brought the good news of Jesus to neighboring villages. 4 of those villages now have followers of Jesus, whom Indrani disciples. She has also helped start multiple house fellowships, one of which is in her home. A home that was full of idols is now a house of worship to the one true God. Jesus has transformed Indrani's life, and He's used her to bring many people into the kingdom. This is what happens when people meet Jesus. This is what happens when disciples make disciples.
Yeah, it's so awesome. I love that last line. This is what happens when disciples make or reach disciples. And that's what Indrana is doing. That's what we're about here at Kensington, is coming alongside people in their local communities where they can have impact in supporting them, funding them, and helping mobilize and equip them to go out. And the ripple effect of that, the multiplication effect of that is just incredible to think about. So the goal is to come alongside, again, hundreds of people like Indrana, maybe even thousands, to impact churches in North India and start churches even before that. What's happening is many churches around Metro Detroit are coming together to make this happen. The goal is that there will be 3,333, all threes, 4 threes, 3,333 churches that are started over the next few years as a result of the TTI initiative. And we want to invite you to come into this because Kensington has committed to starting 1,000 of those churches. And that's a huge goal, and it's going to take some work for us to get to it. So what we're asking of you today is letting you know that to start a church in America takes lots of money. I can't even say the number, but I know it's in the millions to start a church well, especially a church of this size anywhere, and it's tough to do. In India, $300 is what we've calculated the amount to be. And that is a number that I think we can easily wrap our brains around. In fact, our kids this last few weeks have been able to wrap their brains around that as well. Craig, who was up here last week and right at the very end shared a celebration. We've had a little coin drive, coin competition between the kids where they're actually bringing in their own money, not checks written by mom and dad, not 20 spots that are handed them to drop in the offering, but they're bringing in their own pennies and nickels and dimes and quarters in a competition to raise money to start a church in India. Last weekend, we got to $300 right at the end of the service, which was so fun, and we were so excited. Actually, the number was $299. I'm not kidding you. We couldn't believe it right at the end. But after we figured out all the pesos and the Canadian pennies that were in there, we decided that it actually really did equal $300. So we celebrated that. So kids are doing this, and we're inviting all of the adults to do it as well. And it's really easy to get involved with it. If you go up to the slide, the next slide here, and there's ways right here located inside of your program as well. You can go to the app. You can go to kensingtonchurch.org/plant, or you can simply right now text Kensington Plant to the number 77977, and you can have impact right now. $300 starts a church. And the really cool thing is that it's not just your $300 because we have a matching organization that's coming alongside of us all the way up to $100,000. So for every dollar that gets given, every $300 that gets given, it is doubled. It is doubled. So the kids last weekend and the $300 that they gave didn't start one church, okay? They started 2 churches because $600 now total is what is going towards the TTI initiative in North India. So just know that your impact isn't just impacting one, it's doubling that, whatever you give. So it's really exciting, and we hope you jump on board this weekend to make it happen. We'll keep you updated as we're going along. We're 10% of the way there right now to our goal, and we hope to be at 100% in just a few weeks. So please join in with that. Today, you have a really wonderful gift in our guest speaker, or our speaker. He's not even a guest. He's been around here a long time. I don't know why I'm calling you a guest, Michael. Michael Bouchard is going to be sharing the message today. Michael has been around Kensington here for how many years now? 13, did you say? 13 years, and we have worked closely together throughout that entire time. He is a guy who loves Jesus. He's passionate, and his life is about being on mission, and he truly, truly lives it out. So thank you so much for your example, not to just the adults in the room, but what you really are doing to make a statement to this next generation as well. So let's give it up for Michael, everybody.
Wow.
Thanks so much for being here today, buddy.
Thank you. Well, Ryan, clearly you've taught me everything I know. So, hey, how you guys doing? You sure? Okay, I gotta tell you, I know Craig often pits the second service against the first service, on stage. We do that behind the scenes too. And I just gotta say, I love the second service. I love first service, but they're quiet. You guys are definitely louder. So let's try it one more time, because you actually sounded like first service. So let's try it again. How you guys doing today? Good. Well, for those who are watching online, hey, how you doing? My name is Michael Bouchard. I'm not the sheriff. I'm the student ministries director here, so I work with middle schoolers and high schoolers. There are some in the room. Let me hear you, middle schoolers and high schoolers. Okay, good. All right. I mean, it is before noon, so I understand. So if you're just joining us, if this is your first time with this series, I wanted to give you a definition. You keep hearing this word. You're going to hear this word "go" a lot. And I just wanted to let you know what that means. So when we talk about go, we are referring to a teaching from Jesus, one of his final commandments to us, one of the final things he said. He said to go into all the nations. He talked to all of his disciples and basically everyone who followed him. He said, go out into the world around you, teach them the things that I've taught you, love the way that I love. That's it. So whenever you hear go, that's what I'm talking about, okay? So Craig was here the first 2 weeks. He talked about go and share, or go and tell was the first week. Then last week he gave a kind of a history of the church movement and church plants, which is really awesome. I love that he gave us a framework for that. So today we're going to talk about barriers. So speaking of barriers, I thought there are a few things that are as visible barriers today that are easy to see in front of us today than construction cones. Y'all seen some construction cones lately, haven't you? Yeah, okay, I wanted to show you what it looks like in the Bouchard house, okay? So here's a map of kind of where we live. I'm not gonna show you where we live because I don't want you ding-dong ditching me. So Sashabaw Road, Baldwin Road, we live kind of in the area between that, around Clarkston, so in the yellow space. Now, for us to go anywhere, we have only 3 options. We have Sashabaw, we have Clintonville, and we have Baldwin. How many of you know that area? Okay, so now I want you to see what it looks like right now near our house. The red is construction. Whereas in a normal day, it takes us 3 minutes to get to a main road or less, or Elizabeth's driving, it's 1 minute. Now it literally takes us up to 15 minutes to get out of our neighborhood. And so I was like, goodness gracious. I mean, there are times in our lives when we want to go, especially in the morning, we just want to go, and we get stuck by some barriers that have been placed in front of us. And as I was sitting in one of those barriers, I was thinking, you know what? That's kind of what it feels like sometimes when we talk about going, when we talk about sharing. Because sharing and making disciples, teaching other people the ways of Jesus, it's rarely as easy as we tend to make it out, right? Because we come here, and I think we start with good intents. We come here, or we meet online, right? So we come here, we meet online, we listen, we learn, we worship together, but then we go out there. And out there never reacts the same way that it happens in here, right? The feeling is different. The response is different out there than it is here. Because what happens when you go out there and you face somebody that you don't really like? Somebody you don't really want to share with? Or what if you go out there and out there you work in a field where, talking about Jesus, bringing up your faith at work, it's kind of out of place. Or maybe sometimes we get the sense to do something, or we feel a call to do something, and it's going to cost us something. Maybe even cost us some money, or cost us some time. And so we want to go, but we run into these barriers. So there's a story that I would like to share today. It's one of my recent favorites, and I think even though it's super short, there's a lot of stuff packed into it. And I think it gives us a beautiful picture of what exactly we're supposed to do with those barriers that we run into when we feel the call to go. But before we begin, I wanted to just make a note for those of you who give to Kensington, who are a part of what we do. I haven't been on this stage in a long time, but I want you to know from the sides, I have been blown away by the stuff that you guys have done this last year, both by serving and by giving. And when I thought like people were just gonna stop giving when we first shut down last summer, like y'all didn't, you gave more, and it was crazy. Like you blew me away. So for those, if you've ever wanted to give to Kensington and you don't know how, we wanted to show you how. You can use the app, you can go online. Usually my wife and I, we would use the app. You can write a check if you do that kind of thing anymore. And so if you'd love to partner with us and what God's doing, that's one way that you can do it. And we want to say thank you for those who have been doing that. But let's pray to begin. If you would, bow your head. Father, we thank you for the call to go, and we thank you for the support to do it. And I ask that right now, while we're all sitting, while we're all listening, I ask that you will bring to each of our minds some barriers that we have when it comes to going, to sharing, to talking, to loving, all of these things. Please bring some specific barriers to our minds and keep them in the front of our minds as we go through the rest of this morning. And I ask that throughout today, we will be able to see them differently, to think about them the way that you think. I ask that you will transform our minds that way and help us to have our ears open so we can listen to you. And we ask that you'll help us to love. And out of this, love the same way that you love. And we ask this in Jesus' name, amen. So today's story comes from a book called Mark. In the New Testament, there are 4 Gospels. Gospels just mean good news, and those are the stories that involve Jesus directly. So there's 4 different accounts, 4 different people wrote. There's one guy named Mark, and Mark he's like one of my favorite writers of the Gospels because he's short. Like, I don't know, like short, but he's like, bullet point short. Like he's got like the bullet point or the ADD gospel. Like if you ever read Mark, there's a word that pops up all the time, and it's called immediately. He says it all the time. And immediately this happened. Immediately this happened. Why? Because he won't mess around. He ain't got no time. So normally he doesn't put a lot of details in the stuff that happens. But in this story in particular, even though it only got like 12 verses, he packs so much into his version of it that I like to use his when I teach from it. So I want to give you a kind of an idea of what happens in this story. So chapter 1. And we'll read chapter 2, but in chapter 1, Jesus had just started his ministry. And one of the ways he started his ministry was he actually was in a town called Capernaum. And in Capernaum, he started healing people. He would teach and then he would heal people. And it had gotten to the point that anytime he would heal people, people would flock to him and he wasn't able to go anywhere. Like he was stuck and he had wanted to go to other places, but they just wouldn't let him. So he actually had to leave Capernaum because it got too chaotic. And so then eventually, after a little bit of time had passed, he came back. And that's where we pick up in chapter 2. Now, I want to let you know, there's a lot happening, and I want you to also pay attention to the characters, all of the characters in this story, because they're all doing something radically different, and each one has this crazy purpose in it. And so just make sure you watch along with that. And then I also wanted to start with a map, because that's going to be important too. So take a look at this map. I got a map of Israel around that time. Ignore the green lines. I just got the picture off of Google Images. I don't know what the green line means, okay? So there are 2 cities that you need to know for this one. Jerusalem, down there in the middle. So Jerusalem is like the major city. It's the major hub. It's where the seat of the religion of Judaism is at. So Jewish people, this was their home. And this is where they came back to. This is where their temple was. Now, Capernaum is where Jesus was. Now, that doesn't look terribly far away, but on foot or by camel or by horse, it'll take about 4 days' journey to get there. So there's quite a distance away. And Capernaum is a small town, whereas Jerusalem is a very big one. So this story starts in Capernaum. So it says this. A few days later, after he had left, this is in Mark chapter 2, a few days later, when Jesus again entered Capernaum, the people had heard he had come. They gathered in such large numbers that there was no one left, not even outside the door. He preached the word to them. Actually, Luke's version adds the details that he actually started talking to what they were called Pharisees or religious leaders. And some of them had come all the way from Jerusalem to talk to Jesus. And it was kind of a secret thing, a secret meeting. And while Jesus is talking, someone notices in the town and people flock to it. Y'all ever opened up goldfish in front of toddlers? You ain't gonna get none, are you? I know some of you have eaten your snacks in closets before. I know it happens. And so think of that when you think of what happened when Jesus would show up to a town. He's teaching, he's talking to some people, just a handful. Someone hears and they're like, yo, Jesus is in town. So they all start flocking to it. In other versions, you see that they actually filled the house, they filled the courtyards, And then they filled the yard around the courtyards. Like, it was packed. And then we continue. It says, some men came, bringing to him a paralyzed man, carried by 4 of them. Since they could not get him to Jesus because of the crowd, they made an opening in the roof above Jesus by digging through it. And then they lowered the mat the man was lying on. Now, sometimes I read these stories so much, like I've heard them a lot through my life. I don't want you to think like, oh, I'll study all the time. I'm just telling you, I've heard this story all throughout my life. And sometimes I forget how weird they are. I want you to imagine Memorial Day tomorrow, spending time with your family, sitting around the kitchen island. You guys are, putting your ribs on your plate, and then you hear something and see some dust falling down, and you look up, and there's, a hole pokes through, and some fingers poke through, and then drywall gets taken out, and then your teenage kid drops down in the sleeping bag. That would be invasive, right? That's the same thing that's happening here. It's just as weird, just as inappropriate, probably more so because it was in their house. So Jesus, when he saw the man, it continues here. It says, Jesus, when he saw their faith. Whoa. We saw whose faith? Their faith. That's key. Remember that for later. He saw their faith and said to the paralyzed man, your sins are forgiven. Their faith, your sins. The man didn't even ask him for it. Son, your sins are forgiven because of their faith. And so what Jesus had just done was explosive. You ever had that moment where you say something that you regret? Maybe you guys are fighting and you throw something out and you're like, I don't know if I should have said that. Remember when you were a kid and your mom said something and you said something smart back to her and it was just silence? It just hangs there, pushes all the oxygen out of the room. Yeah, some of you are like, yeah, you're laughing. Did that happen this morning? I'm just kidding, Shane. I'm just kidding. So that's the kind of moment that's what happened. Jesus said something explosive. How do we know? Because of how they responded. And it says this, now some of the teachers of the law were sitting there and they said to themselves, like, these are the head honchos, okay? These are people who are like well-known people through all these towns, even though they didn't live there. They thought, why does this fellow talk like that? He's blaspheming. Who can forgive sins but God alone? Now we're going to pause here because there is so much happening. 6 verses in, already so much is happening. So let's take a look at what they're doing. Now I remember the first time I read this story, I thought 2 major questions. I had 2 that came to my mind. First off was, why did he forgive him? Clearly he had a different need. They didn't drop him down the hole for that. And his response was to forgive him. Second of all, why were they mad? Why were they mad that he would do that? You know why? Because with that statement, Jesus was attacking their system. They didn't know who he was. They thought he was just a rabbi, just another teacher, and he was attacking their system because they knew a God who worked in a very specific way. God loves these people. God loves these people more than other people. And if you're gonna be forgiven, where do you gotta go? Where do you gotta go? The temple, which is in Jerusalem. That's where you go. That's where God meets you. That's where they have like the blood and the animals and the altars and all that stuff. That's where you go. That's where God meets you, and only God can forgive sins. Do you see what Jesus is doing here? That's why he started with that. Once in a while, I get a chance to sub in some of our local schools. I've seen I was actually at your school earlier this week, and he was, even though he's a teenager, he actually acknowledged me. That was amazing. I was really impressed. But sometimes I will choose to work with kindergartners. And I'll only do 1 day at a time. But I learned very quickly that if I don't start the day by letting them know things are gonna be different, then all day long I will have kids coming up to me, 5-year-olds saying, Mrs. So-and-so doesn't do it that way. Mr. So-and-so doesn't do it that way. And they'll just go all day long. And they're not angry, they're not upset, but they're just letting me know. And if I don't wanna have a whole day of that, then I have to start it by saying, hey, things are going to be different. Because whether we're kids or whether adults, we don't like our system shaken, especially if they're ones that make us feel comfortable, and definitely especially if they're religious ones. So you have Jesus, right? He's throwing bombs. Then you got the cranky church people. Then you've got the paralyzed man. Now it's interesting, as many years as I've heard this story, he probably gets the least amount of focus. We talk about everybody else, which makes me think he's probably a middle child. Any middle kids in the room? Raise your hand if you are a middle child. No one? No one's raising their hand. You guys are invisible, right? Just kidding. I'm the youngest, can you tell? So let's look back up and look at from his eyes. See, we never know why he was paralyzed. We don't know if it was from birth. Did he get in a fight? Was there an accident? Did he get knocked off the donkey? I don't know. They don't tell us why he was paralyzed. Now I want you to imagine him in that world. Imagine him not being able to access the same life as everybody else. Imagine him in that system. When do you think was the last time he went to Jerusalem? When was the last time he was able to go to the temple? And I imagine his despair when they got there and realized they were too late. What if Jesus never comes back to this town? What if something happens to him? See, there were barriers every step of the way for this man. So then comes the good guys, right? And this is where it gets good, right? Then we got the 4 good guys, which there were actually more, but there were only 4 who took him up to the top. They carried the man to the house. They sacrificed their time. They risked failure. They didn't know what was going to happen. They climbed up onto the top because when they got there, they couldn't push in. And I imagine them being frustrated, but one of them had a brilliant idea. One of them got a little creative, and they're like, well, we could climb the roof. They climbed the roof. They dug a hole in a stranger's house and dropped him in. They're the heroes of the story, right? That's what sometimes how we teach that. And I got to tell you, like, I get nervous TPing someone's house, which we don't do that anymore because that's like throwing gold on their house now, right? But I would get nervous TPing someone's house or ding-dong ditching, let alone getting on top of the roof and carving a hole in it. I can't see myself doing something like that. Why would they do that? Well, I think they had faith that Jesus could do something, could bring some good news to this man. They had hope that they would be able to help make that happen. And they had love for someone who is in need. And because of those things, they were motivated to get on that roof. So back to the story, the awkward moment happens, and it says immediately, there it is, told you, immediately, Jesus knew in his spirit that these were the things that they were thinking in their hearts. He's talking about the religious people. And he said to them, why are you thinking these things? Which one's easier for you? Say to this paralyzed man, your sins are forgiven, or tell him, get up, take up your mat and walk. I mean, which one's easier for you? Right, you're like, I don't know. That's why you feel that way, because that's what Jesus wanted. He's like, yeah, in this system, they're impossible. Both of them are possible. And then he continues and says, but I want you to know that the Son of Man, he's talking about himself, the Son of Man has authority on earth to forgive sins right there. Not in the temple, right there. Not here, out there. Okay. Son of Man has authority to forgive sins. Oh no, what are you doing? I got some technology issues right now. No, reset. No, okay. All right. Okay. I don't know what this is doing. Save. Okay. Thank you for telling me that. All right. This is why we print them off too. Okay, so he says this. But I want you to know that the Son of Man has authority both on earth and heaven to forgive sins. So he said to the man, I tell you, get up, take up your mat, and go home. So he got up, took up his mat, and walked out in full view of everyone. This amazed everyone and praised God, saying, we have never seen anything like this. So Jesus forgives the man. He sends a firing shot at the system, and then he offers hope to everybody, all in 12 verses. And I remember when I was growing up, I thought that was it. Some of you are thinking right now, great story. What does that have to do with me? I'm going to get to that. Because as I was growing up, I kind of figured like the whole point of the story was to know Jesus is powerful, and I got to bring my friends to church. But then a couple of months ago when I was reading this, I realized that I was missing someone. My entire life, there was someone in that story that I had never even paid attention to. So you got Jesus, right? Jesus offering forgiveness and love to someone who needed it. You have the person who was in desperate need. You had the cranky church people who were upset about sinners and systems. But then you had the 4 friends who knew the rules but were like, you know what? Sorry about your roof, man, but my friend needs some help. Who were willing to tear through walls. That's it, right? No. There's one more. It's the crowd. Capernaum is a real place. I've actually had the privilege to go there. I've been to Israel twice, and one of those times I got to see it. I did take a really fuzzy picture from when I was there on a really old smartphone, and that's one of the ruins that were there. Now here's an aerial shot of Capernaum as it stands today. There's some new buildings and some old ruins. And Capernaum itself is only 13 acres around there, roughly, and they guess that around that time there were probably about 1,500 people that were in that town. That is less than the space and also less than the population of just the village of Lake Orion. Anybody in the room who's from the village of Lake Orion or like lives in the village right now, somewhere in there? No? Okay, how about Orion Township, like the greater Orion Township? Yeah? Okay, so those who are in Orion Township, I got a question. What's the name of the homeless man that's always sitting on the bench in downtown? What's his name? Bruce. Yeah, when I moved here to Lake Orion like 13 years ago, there were 4 things that I learned immediately. Number 1, the whole world pronounces Orion wrong. You're the only ones that got it right. Number 2, dragons apparently don't live in caves, they live on lakes, right? Okay. Number 3, if you go any slower than 65 on M24, you might as well just not drive. And then the last thing is that there's a homeless man, and immediately one of the first things people told me was, his name is Bruce. It's a small town. Some of you don't even live in it. How many of you don't live in Lake Orion and you knew about Bruce? You see where you know where I'm going? So here we have a small town among small towns. Jesus is in town. The probability of someone with a visible disability like that, the probability of people in that crowd knowing who he is, very high. They also knew why Jesus was there because in chapter 1, we learned what? He was there and he had healed. Jesus could heal. This man needed healing. Yet when they came to take him in to see Jesus, what did Mark, and actually Luke said this too, what did they give as the reason they couldn't see Jesus? Because of the crowd. They showed up. The people knew, and no one looked. They knew his need, and they turned away and huddled in closer. Like I said, barriers every step of the way. He had his condition, he had the system, he had the roof and the walls, and he had the crowd. And you know what? Only one of those barriers didn't get broken. Which one was it? The crowd. The only time the crowd moved was when everything was all done. Everything already happened. The miracle already happened. The great story already happened. That was when the crowd dispersed. So we have these characters. We have Jesus, who's healing people. We have the man who's in need. We have the 4 creative people who are fighting for their friend. We have the religious, cranky people. And then you've got the crowd who's in action, stood in the way of everything. Now, I would love to tell you that I am somebody who is like those 4 men. I would love to tell you I'm like that all the time. I would love to tell you that when there are needs, I go. But if I am honest with you, whether you're in the room or online, if I'm honest with you, I, most often, am like the crowd. I see needs. I see people that need. I see people in my life, people in my family, people at schools, people in our community, people across the world. And I turn in. I huddle in. I don't hop on the roof. A couple of years ago, some of you know this, I used to live next door in a trailer park. I moved there to connect that community to this community, and now Brooke and Alyssa are doing that there and in Oxford, and I hear that they want to do one in Pontiac too, which is awesome. That's like expanding, which is cool. But when I first moved in there, that was my whole goal. And I had some friends who told me I probably shouldn't go because it was pretty rough at that time. It's changed since then, but it was really rough, had a lot of crime. And I was like, no, it'll be fine. And I moved in and I met my neighbors. And the first thing I realized is they were actually the drug runners of the neighborhood. They were. And actually there were some gang members who were known gang members in that house. And there was one kid, he was the youngest kid in that house. And he had a really bad attitude. And we would do tutoring in our house on Tuesdays after school. So people from here, from Kensington, would come over and they would tutor these kids and help them with their homework. And he would stand outside and taunt them the entire time. This kid would stand out and he would even throw rocks and stuff. He was a barrier. And what it ended up doing to me is it made me start to build a barrier in my own self. To the point where I had actually got to talk with one of his teachers at school because of my connections with the school. And she was like, hey, if there's anything you can do to help him, please let me know. If there's anything I can do to help you help him, let me know. And I remember going home after talking to her and I was like, I don't want to do that. I didn't. I'm not joking. I did not want to do it. And I was in there, that was the whole reason I was in there. So you might be someone who's a wall breaker, but I want to take a moment for those of us for those of you who are a little like me, like sometimes you face those moments where you know you want to, but you just don't. You know you should, you know you could, but you just won't. Because I do that too, and I want you to know, I don't want you to feel guilty. As I was putting this together, I was like, gosh, I just hope no one feels guilty. I don't want you to feel guilty, I want you to feel free. Because I think you want to, and I think I want to, and I just don't know. Maybe I just don't know that it's actually supposed to be me. Or maybe you just don't know that it could be you. Or maybe sometimes our fear gets in the way. Maybe even our fear leads us to not like a certain person or like a certain group of people because of who they are or what they believe. And so what happens is instead of tearing down walls, we become one. I become one. And I think there's all sorts of reasons, tons of reasons why we do this. I mean, sometimes we build a wall because we don't like someone. And usually if we don't like someone, it's for good reason, right? And maybe you don't like maybe there's a person in your life that just gets under your skin and you don't really want to help them. Or maybe there's a group of people that really just bug you and you just want them, you're like, man, you know what? They make bad decisions. They need to be left on their own, like people who live here. Or maybe we just get a little busy, right? I'm too busy. I'm too busy to help. Or maybe it's gonna cost too much to do so. Or maybe I don't know how. Or maybe someone's hurt us before. Or maybe we don't trust that it's us, or trust that God's with us, or trust that it'll do any good. But whatever the reason, we build walls. We become a wall. But I have good news for us because I believe that, and I know that it is a very short distance between the crowd and the roof. Very short distance. And I think we can get up there. We can climb that roof. And I think there's one question that will allow us to be able to do that. And we're going to watch a story of somebody that I've actually never met him, even though he's been at Kensington for a while. He lives in New York City. Some of you guys know him, Craig Mays. So he was out there. So while I've been here, he was mostly in New York City, but he came back. He's at the Clinton Township campus. And but I have high respect for this man, especially because of his stories. And in this story, I want you to pay attention to a couple things. Pay attention to the wall that gets built, to the barrier that gets built up, but also pay attention to the question that he asks that helps him climb on to the roof. Let's watch this.
So I really don't like cities, especially big cities. It was incredibly disruptive in 2006 when God began to nudge my wife Chris and me to come to New York City.
I was sitting on a bench much like this in Madison Square Park where God said to me clearly, you're not a suburb boy anymore. This is your city. This is your home. These are your people. And I felt it and I knew it and I embraced it and there's no looking back.
In fact, when I thought of cities, I thought about all the things that probably many of you think of. I thought about crime and danger. It just wasn't attractive to me. Yet God clearly called us to come. It was quite an adjustment for me. And actually for the first few years, I hated it. Eventually, I found out it wasn't that dangerous and things weren't that scary and I wasn't anxious all the time and really began to enjoy living in the city and doing the work God called us to do. It was one of those just super hot July days in New York City where the city and the concrete and the brick is just holding the heat in. So I stopped at Starbucks to grab a cold Frappuccino before I went to my office. And I came to this intersection and I noticed on the corner there were three guys, they didn't have shirts on, which is very unusual. And I got about, I think it was about right here, and I felt some arms come around me from behind, and because I know a lot of people in this area, I thought it was probably some friend goofing off, and then I felt the hand go down to my back pocket where my wallet was, and I realized, oh my gosh, I'm getting mugged. And so right here I pivoted, just instinct, pivoted against the building, trapped my hand with my wallet right here, and he's trying to pull me away. He's reaching, trying to get my wallet. He's saying things like, old man, just give us your wallet, old man, stop fighting us. He's roughing me up against the wall. I noticed people are walking by and no one's paying any attention. The only thing I noticed was my cold Frappuccino spilled on the sidewalk. I was frustrated, I think, more about that than anything in the moment. And then finally the other two guys jump in, and so they push me, and one guy starts pounding me on the arm, one guy starts punching me in the gut, and I had this sense of this cannot be happening to me. Kind of blurred almost in the background. I could see people walking by, people across the street. No one was helping me, and there's this moment of just almost desperation, like what's going to happen, how's this going to turn out? Finally, someone comes by on a skateboard and stops, a young guy, and then a guy dressed in a suit, looked like a Wall Street guy, steps up off the curb onto the sidewalk, and they both said something like, hey, what are you guys doing? And the guys took off running, and these guys are standing there, my good Samaritans, and I straightened up, and my wallet was still there. I was pretty proud of that. I look at my hand, it's all cut up and bleeding. The guy in the skateboard calls the police. It seemed like I blinked, and there was all these sirens, and police came from 2 different precincts, and suddenly I'm surrounded by seemed like about a dozen cops, and there was still this sense of surreal that this didn't actually happen to me. And I walked away just probably an hour after the mugging, and I'm getting on the subway heading to my office. So I was, in a meeting with my staff having just been mugged, and I'm telling them the story, almost felt like outside of myself, just kind of making jokes and getting on with business and say, we have business to do, that, I'm okay. They showed a lot of worry and concern for me. I didn't really feel it. Business as usual. And then for some reason, about a week later, I started feeling anxious about it. And then I remember having dreams about it. Really, night after night, I was having dreams where I was back there again and people were beating on me. And it began to change how I was in the city. I began to become very aware of who was around me. I was scanning all the time, looking for people. I would begin to jump at sounds and noises. I would find myself standing against the wall so no one could come up behind me. I would avoid certain blocks. If it looked too deserted, I wouldn't walk down the block because there might be someone there hiding. It just changed the way I was getting around the city. It stayed with me all summer long. I really began to feel like I can't live this way. It's harder for me to do my work this way. I've got to do something with it. So I was trying to process it. I was talking to friends about it. I even actually talked to a counselor. I was encouraged to talk to a counselor about it, so I did that. But it just persists. And so I decided in early September that I was going to share this in a devotion with the staff. So I sat in my office at the end of the workday. Before I put my pen down, this kind of thought or prayer came to me, and I wrote it down, and it said, God, I don't want to live in fear. Exclamation point, put my pen down, grabbed my stuff, and headed home the 2 blocks to my apartment. I've probably done this hundreds of times, but at this season, because of the mugging, it was not really just an easy walk home, because I found that I was hyper vigilant, really paying attention to what was going on around me, scanning all the time. I would even say kind of jumpy. So on this particular day, on my journey home, about right here, and I'd seen just ahead of me this very large man walking kind of slow, kind of lumbering, and so I gave him wide berth to go around him on his left in a very dramatic fashion. As we're both walking, I'm passing him, he turns like this, which kind of startled me and made me jump a little bit. But before I could say or do anything or move by quickly, he said these words. He said, thank you for not being afraid of me. A bolt of lightning hit me. It was so shocking because I'd just written these words, God, I don't want to live in fear. And now this man, less than 5 minutes later, is looking me in the eyes and saying, thank you for not being afraid of me. And I have to say, there was no question that was God. I asked him the question, I said, well, why would I be afraid of you? And then he told me a story that he had been released from prison not too long ago. He was in a program and had to get back to his halfway house on time or he would violate parole. And something had happened to his bus ticket. And so he was stranded there. And so he began to walk toward the bus station, but it was almost a 3-mile walk. And he had made it almost there all the way this way, but he also didn't have any money. So he didn't know what to do when he got to the bus stop. Anyhow, so we're having this conversation, and he's describing to me going block after block after block, anxious, looking at his watch, wondering if he's going to make it in time, and asking for help. And every block he was praying, God, would you please send someone to help me? Block after block after block, and no success. So he made it all the way up, of all places, right across from my office. And I come out here on the sidewalk, not wanting to live in fear, and here we're having this conversation. And so we talked about how I could help him, and just a couple blocks up was my bank, and I almost never give money out on the streets, but I saw his ID. His story was believable. He had tears in his eyes. I just felt the connection. Plus, I knew that God had sent me to him. There's no question. He felt grateful and was in tears because God sent me to him, and I felt grateful and in tears because I felt God had sent him to me. This was a moment, a divine moment for both of us. And so we took care of getting his bus ticket, and he went on to grab his bus and hopefully get there in time. I never saw him again. And I stood there really I have to say, in awe of God, because I knew he was doing a work in my heart right then by bringing this man to me, whose story would move my heart to do something to help him. And after the fact, as I would replay this over the next few days, I just pictured in my mind's eye, as he was crying out to God, I believe that God was hearing his prayer. Block after block, mile after mile, as this man desperately needed help. And I began to picture it from God's perspective of him longing to help this man. That's the desire of his heart, to help him. But he needs someone to respond. So God might be asking the question, who do I have? Who do I have that will listen to me? Who that I have who is not living in fear? Who do I have that will provide help for this man? Because God is not going to drop a bus ticket down in the streets. He's not going to drop a $20 bill. He needs someone, some person, some man, some woman to respond to this man's cry for help. So as time has gone by from this experience, it's really become for me a paradigm of how God works in the world. At this very moment today, there are people all over the globe, all over the planet Earth, all over our cities who are crying out to God for help, who are looking for answers to prayer. And God hears every single one of those. And the challenge for those of us who are following Jesus and want to build and grow his kingdom is when God is looking for someone, when he's asking the question, who do I have? Will he look at us and say, oh good, I've got him, I've got her, because they are going to respond. They are going to be the answer to this prayer. That's a way that I want to live. That's a way that I want for you to live. That you are living your life, eyes open, ears open, ready to respond to God. When someone is asking God for help, God sees you, he sees me, and he says, oh great, they are going to respond. They are going to be the answer to this prayer.
So what you just saw was somebody move from the crowd to the roof. Did you see it? Did you see the process that it went through? Did you see how someone had hurt him? And that led him to do what? To build another brick of not trusting in other people, not trusting that God could do something, which even led him in some sense to not like someone or not like some people. And because of something that had happened to him, built up a wall, built up a barrier, and became one. But one question that got him from the crowd to the roof was what? What was the question? Say it. What was it? Do you know? It's God's question. It's this. God's question to us is this. Who do I have? Who do I have? We actually have these bracelets. We're going to have you guys, before you leave, we're giving these out. We'd love you to take one and wear that through the week because God is asking this question in every situation. Who do I have? And I love that question because as I think through it, I can picture God looking out over all of our circumstances, looking out over all of our situations that we find ourselves, and he's like, wait, who do I have? Who do I have at that place? Who do I have there? Oh, Chrissy, she works on that unit, right? Or Matt, he works at that business, right? I have him there. Or maybe like, who do I have at that school? Who's at Lake Orion High School? DJ is, right? I got DJ there. He can do something for me. He can show people what I'm like. Or what about that? Who lives in that neighborhood? Oh, Denvernos do, right? I got them, and I can see God doing that and say, well, I got them. Yeah, there's some serious issues, but I got them. I've got him, I've got her. See, who does he have? He has you. He has me, he has us. We are who God has. We are who God aims to send out and go and to bring love into our communities, even when it's uncomfortable for us to, even when it's difficult for us to. See, our world is full of hurt. You know this. You're surrounded by people who are hurting. You even hurt yourself sometimes, don't you? Yeah, we all do. We know what hurt is, and we are surrounded by brokenness, and God is saying, you're following me. You know me. I've got love. You can give love. See, those of us who follow Jesus, we know what love and forgiveness look like, and we know that it doesn't have to happen in here. Where does it happen? Out there. And he calls us to be ones to go out there. Actually, I say it this way, like we were not meant to be walls. We were meant to break walls. People who follow Christ, people who know what love is, we are not meant to be walls. I think this is why some of the younger generations struggle with the church right now. Because sometimes they look at us and they're like, just a bunch of walls. God loves these people, or God accepts these people, but maybe not these. And see what he's calling us to do. And that's why I love working with the younger generation, because they're going to do it. I've seen them. They do it all the time. God is sending us to go. And another way of saying this is this. John, one of the disciples of Jesus, who was probably in the room when this happened, when this story happened, he said it this way. He said, and some of you might know this one, we love, why? Why do we love? We love because he first loved us. Another way to say this is to go is to love. And to love is to go, and we go because we are loved. Love sacrifices. That's what it does. But it's also creative. Love will do anything it takes, even if it's as awkward as dying on a cross and humiliating. Even if it's just as strange as climbing onto a roof and digging through a ceiling. So we are called to be the people who see the hurt among us and bring healing, to see the walls around us and to tear them down. So how do you get from the crowd to the roof? Here's a statement for you. Okay, ready? First of all, say me. That's it, say me. God's asking, who do I have? Say me. And then love creatively. So back to that story in the trailer park when I had that neighbor nearby. One of the first Christmases that I was there, I was still working in the kids program, and we got a lot of Christmas services, right? And they usually do kid stuff. So I went to my family's earlier in the day to do Christmas, and we traded gifts, and then I came back home and let my dog out, and then I came here to the church. And I would usually just walk because it was quicker than going around all the U-turns. So I walked to the church, and I was at the church all day. I come back home, and I come home and realize like my door of my car is slightly open. Now it had a lock issue, so anytime it got cold, sometimes it would stick. So if you pulled hard enough, the door would open. So I saw that my door was open, and I looked inside. And my family had bought me a game for Christmas, and it was pretty expensive, and it was pretty techy, and it was missing. It had been sitting on my chair, or sitting on the back seat, and it was gone. And I see little footprints going over to the next door. And I was like, I was at church. I was doing the Lord's work. And he stole my stuff. And my first thought was, I'm not going to say anything. You know what? Whatever. It's not worth it. Wall. But then I flipped to the other side and I was like, you know what? I ain't going to say something. I'm going to go over there and I'm going to tell him off for what he did. And I was like, they scare me though. Wall. So then I was like, okay, you know what? I'm here to help. Why am I complaining? How about, okay, fine. God, what do you want me to do? Now, sometimes I ask that. When I really want to, I don't always hear something. But when I don't want to hear something, that's usually when I hear it the most. And I'm like, God, what should I do? And I heard, I had this thought, go buy him batteries. Because it took unique batteries. It took C batteries. Most people don't have those. It took a lot of them. You need like 8. And I didn't even have any. And I was like, go buy batteries. Like, it is Christmas Eve. And the only thing open is Meijer. And you know what that line is like right before they close, right? Yeah, I was like, no. Okay, fine. So I drove to Meijer, got a bunch of C batteries, brought him back home, knocked on his door. He opened the door. He looked at me, gave me kind of like this, this little grunty look, and then I handed him batteries, and his eyes got wide. And I said, enjoy the game. Merry Christmas. And I went home. After break, the next time we had tutoring, he was at my house. every week since then, he was at my house until they eventually got kicked out of the park and had to leave. Love takes creativity. It takes us being willing to say, me. So the next time, what if the next time a difficult situation arises? What if all of us, when God asked, who do I have? We said me, we picked up a hammer and we jumped on a roof. Like, think about this, like really. Now, by the way, that's why you're getting these bracelets, because we want you to take one, and the next time you go into your office, you've got this on you, and you remember, oh yeah, things are crazy right now. Oh, I'm here, right? What if the next time you saw that disruptive that coworker who you know is hurting, and that's why she's acting out that way, what if instead of joining everyone else complaining or being silent about it, what if you walked up to that situation, took your hammer of love and grace and mercy, and you walked up and you're like, not today. What if you walked into your crazy family or in-law situation, the ones that really don't like you, and make sure that they show it to you, and what if instead of complaining about them, what if you found a way to serve them and do something for the person who cannot stand you? What if the next time your school superintendent makes a decision that you don't like, instead of getting on Facebook and complaining about them, you find a way to reach out to them, see what they need, and you meet that need of someone you disagree with? What if you finally listen to that prompting to start that nonprofit organization that you have always wanted to and you knew could be a great thing? What if you went to the community and the group of people that make you uncomfortable, and you went to them and you embraced them and you showed them what love looks like by being with them? What if you helped start a church in a part of India, in northern India, where churches aren't allowed? What if we took, and instead of being barriers for the world around us, we chose to be love and tear the walls down? See, it is a powerful thing when the people who follow Jesus, when people of love decide to move out of the crowd and under the roof. How do I know? Because we're here because of it. This whole thing exists because of it, because people did that. So may we be people who say, me, and love creatively. May we be people who shared the hope of Jesus, who didn't wait for people to come into the temple, come here. What if we went out there? Even to the people in places that we don't want to. May we be people who choose to tear through walls instead of build them. May we be people who shout, me. May we, you and I, be people who choose to go. Father, I thank you for giving us this call, this responsibility, for letting us partner with you in bringing love and restoration to everyone and everything around us. You are creative with your love towards us. Help us to be creative and brave and bold with our love towards others. Help us to be weird. Help us to be awkward. Help us to climb through a roof. Help us to climb down into our businesses and climb down into our schools and climb down into our homes. Help us to go to our neighborhoods. Help us to go to the communities that we don't like. Help us to be generous with how we give. Help us to be like you, because we know and trust you love us. We know and trust that you are with us. So help all of us to pick up our hammer, to pick up love, to pick up joy, peace, faithfulness. Help us to pick that up and blast through the walls of darkness around us. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
You love with no reservation. your perfection. And there's no need in me pretending. I'll give you everything. I'll give you everything. You deserve my full attention. Nothing less than my devotion. Oh, speak to me and I will listen. I'll give you everything. I'll give you everything. Oh, 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 you can have my heart. You can have my heart. Oh, oh, you can have my heart. You can have my heart. Be the Lord of my emotions. Set me free from selfish motives. Search me till there's nothing hidden. I'll give you everything. I'll give you everything. Oh, 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 you can have my heart. You can have my heart. Oh, 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 you can have my heart. Yes, you can have my Oh this life and breathe on this heart that is now yours. Oh, the joy I found surrendering my crowns at the feet of the King who surrendered everything. Oh, the peace that comes when I'm broken and undone by your unfailing grace. I can lift my voice and say that you can have it all, Lord. Every part of my world. Take this life and breathe on this heart that is now yours. You can have it all. You can have it all, Lord. Every part of my world. Take this life and breathe on this heart that is now yours. There is no greater call than giving you my all. I lay it all down. I lay it all down. There is no greater love, no higher name above. I lay it all down. I lay it all down. There is no greater call than giving you my all. I lay it all down. I lay it all down. There is no greater love, no higher name above. this heart that is now yours. Yes, take this life and breathe on this heart that is now yours.
Yeah, that's awesome. So may we go out this week knowing we got a hammer in our hands, like a good one that's not gonna hurt people, right? We're so glad you came here today. I'm so happy to see you guys. I haven't seen some of you in forever. And so before you take off, make sure if you didn't grab one of the programs, grab one so you know if you and your family want to support and plant a church or help a church plant in India. Make sure you do that. Grab one of those. Grab a bracelet on your way out so you can take that with you and answer that question. Who do I have? And next week, we got Craig's coming back to finish out the series of Go. And also, this Wednesday is midweek. And we want to let you know, midweeks are going to be outside for the rest of the summer. They're also not going to be online, okay? So they're not going to be streaming, but they're going to be outside here throughout the summer. We would love to have you join us. Have a fantastic Memorial Day tomorrow. Enjoy your ribs.